Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Earlier today, I posted in the comment section that there would be no paranormal side, that I was going to do an interview. Well, the interview fell through. Things come up in life. So what I chose to do is we'll continue with the paranormal side, but I want to give you an update on what happened today when I called the detective in charge of what was going on in Virginia. So before we do that, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's second upload, shall we? All right, guys, like I said, things come up in life. I did talk to the truck driver from Ohio. He is retired. We got talking for 2 hours, and we didn't do the interview, so hopefully we can get it done tomorrow. But I did make another phone call today, and it was to the lead investigator for Richland Police Department in the regards to the Richard Honecker case. I also called Tim Coonbo Baker prior to that to kind of ask for some advice and guidance. And this is how it all went down. So I first called Coonbo, and I hadn't talked to Coonbo in, a couple months now. And I half expected him not to answer because he's a busy guy, and, you know, he's retired and living his life. Phone rang twice, and, "Hey, Jeff, how are you?" And I was so excited. So I proceeded to tell him what was going on and filled him in on a little bit of what's been going on. Compared it to the Jimtown Road case. Filled him in on that, which he was not aware of. But I asked him, I said, listen, this is what happened. This guy went missing a year ago, and they just recently found his body in a culvert. Some hikers stumbled across his body. Yet, in the newspaper, they're saying hikers found body identified as Richard Honecker, and they're going to be sending his remains to the lab in Roanoke for DNA analysis and this and that. And I said, well, you know, they already have his ID, so why are they, you know, putting this in the paper like that? Have you ever heard of anything like that? And he said, Jeff, they do crazy things. Chances are it's to mislead us, you know, and they did find a second body in there, as you guys heard when I called the sheriff's station last night, and a deputy let that slip. But I looked in the newspaper last night, and there was no second case going on. There is not a second case. So we ended up getting talking, and he told me about a strange case. I'm going to get off topics for a second and share something Coonbo shared with me, and then get back into my phone call to the Richland Police Department. So Coonbo's like, I had a case, he goes, it got me in trouble. There was Dogman, Bigfoot crossing and using these trails by the waterway. So all of a sudden, they built this culvert, and there was no more sightings of them. And he went down and started looking around, and he said that on one end of the culvert was these marks that really resembled hooves. And this kind of was, it kind of kicked up some ideas for me. He called them pug marks. And he said they resembled hooves, right? But what they were is when a Sasquatch or Dogman is running on all fours and they're in an aggressive stance, they'll run on their fists and their tips of their toes on the back. So when they're running on their fists, if you look at your fist, you're going to have kind of a hoof-like print, especially if your hand is covered in hair. And I was like, wow, I started thinking. And then he goes, but on the other side of the culvert, they were bipedal. So they were running using this culvert as a way of travel. But that got me thinking of some things that people are saying, hey, we see these hoof prints, but we're seeing these large bipedal creatures as well, hairy bipedal creatures. What the heck are they? They don't have antlers. They look like either a Dogman or a Bigfoot. And then I thought right back to what Coonbo said, these pug marks. And I guess that's what they call marks, these marks in Africa, he said. But they are exactly like these creatures are running on their fists. And honestly, like, just look at your fist and your pointer finger and your middle finger as one part of the hoof, and your ring finger and your pinky as another. But you've got hair in between, right? Or not in between, but on them. So it's kind of gonna. So that was kind of a fascinating story. It's been a messed up day. I wanted to get so much done today, and I did, but a lot kind of just veered off course of things that how I wanted the day to go, and I hate when that happens. It just drives me nuts. So Tim and I let each other go, and now I've got this crazy theory in my brain about these pug marks. So then I call the lead detective. And I say, hello, my name is yada yada. And he says, yeah. And I said, I want to let you know that I'm recording this. And he says, no, you're not. He said, you can hang up now or you can stop recording. And I said, okay. So I said, well, I got a couple questions. I said, what made you believe that it was Richard? And I heard that his ID was present. So, and are the two bodies connected? Needless to say, what he said to me was, this is an open investigation. I cannot share any of that information with you. And I don't intend on it. Wait for the news. So now my next plan is to have my connection down there give them a holler, because I sound like a New Yorker or someone that's not from the South. So why would they even want to talk to me? Because it did not seem like he wanted to talk to me the second I said hello. So hopefully we can get some sort of answers from this guy. I'm going to stay on it until I do. I wish I wasn't honest and let him know that I was recording it. But I don't know. I got a little, I guess I got a little nervous knowing that he was the lead investigator. So I won't be getting nervous next time. So now what I want to do is I want to kind of end the night with a couple of paranormal experiences. Tonight's first paranormal side encounter or experience. Ever since I was little, when I'd lie down to go to sleep, I would hear voices, almost like multiple people were in the room with me talking at normal speaking volume directly into my ear. It would literally start as soon as my head hit the pillow. I didn't even have to close my eyes to initiate it. Sometimes I'd hear conversations between two or more people. Others I'd hear people talking to me, or hear people speaking what seemed like gibberish. I don't understand it because several times I worked up the courage to answer and have received replies. For example, one of the most memorable experiences was when I was a freshman in high school, about 6 years ago now. I had just laid my head down onto my pillow, hadn't even closed my eyes before the voice of a young woman yelled out in my ear that was pressed against my pillow, "Don't!" I ignored it and closed my eyes, as I usually do, but the voice persisted and said again, "Don't!" This repeated twice more before I sat up with my eyes open and said, "Don't what?" more annoyed at this point than anything, and not really expecting a reply, but to my surprise, the woman answered me by saying, "Don't go to sleep." I quickly asked for the voice to leave me alone and heard nothing else that night, and I was able to go to sleep after calming down considerably, as it was the first time I had worked up the nerve to speak to one of the voices, and was terrified that I'd replied. My problem is that I don't hear anything whenever I share a room or bed with someone, and since getting married, I haven't had that problem with hearing anything until 2 nights ago. I'd laid down next to my husband after turning off the TV in our room and had just gotten comfortable and was about to shut my eyes when I heard a male's voice say very loudly, "F you," in a moderately aggressive voice, more irritated than angry, and it shook me to my core because in almost 5 years we being together, I've never experienced any voices when sharing a bed with him or anyone else throughout my life. And I'm not sure what's going on. It hasn't happened since, and I don't want it to because I've come to enjoy falling asleep without being scared out of my mind. I tried looking into the possibility that it's hallucinations, but I read that they happen when you are about to fall asleep. And this is always happening as I'm getting comfortable for the night and trying to clear my mind from the day and relax. Tonight's second experience on the paranormal side. So I've worked at a couple of hotels, mostly small ones, since I live in a small city. The first one I worked at was a 24-room hotel. Sometimes guests would leave without checking out. It was policy to pay up front for the stay. I was at the front desk, but I'd also help with laundry, so I wouldn't always see who left. On this particular day, room 13 was closed with the lock. Keys hadn't been turned in. I waited till 1 p.m. to open the room, but the inside lock was locked, so I figured they were probably staying another night. As I was going back to the reception area, what looked like a girl was walking my way. She was dressed all in black, hoodie, and her face was covered with her hair. I honestly freaked out a bit. I felt fear and the need to run. I was in my workplace, so I didn't. My mind kept telling me to ask her what room she was in. Maybe she was in room 13. But my instinct told me to avoid her. I walked past her like the coward I am. One of the maids didn't. She was supposed to clean that room and was waiting for the guest to give her the okay. So when she saw this girl, she didn't think to ask twice. The girl responded in a very deep and raspy voice. I will be leaving today. The maid didn't respond while this person kept walking. When she calmed a bit, she called to me to tell me about it. Some of my other coworkers also saw this person, but they felt off about it and avoided contact. I stayed in the reception area for a while. There were no guests but this one, and no one had come in or out. I kept calling room 13 to tell them to check out. It was 2 hours ago, and they would have to pay for another night if they didn't leave. No answer. I decided to try and open the door again. This time, success. The room was empty, and it was clean. Me and the maid were freaked. Who was that person? Were there really guests? We started thinking that maybe some homeless person had snuck in. I went to check the log, and the room had been rented, but the guest went for 5 minutes and left. Apparently, they didn't return. I immediately started looking for this person, and my coworkers were helping. We looked everywhere, and we locked the doors along the way, making sure there was no one in the rooms. We didn't find anything. I only had access to the camera that pointed to the exit. I checked, and no one had come out. At 4 p.m., it was time for me to go. I told the lady that stayed in my place, let's call her Amy, about the situation, and she got freaked out, saying she wouldn't be leaving her area the entire shift. The next day when I came in, the night shift guy asked me if I noticed Amy acting weird. He said she was in such a hurry to leave the night before. Turned out that Amy was chilling at the front desk because the hotel was empty. Then she saw someone walk down the stairs that came from the rooms. She described the same person we saw. She was so scared she froze. This person didn't even look at her. It remained unexplained. We requested the footage so we could see where this person had gone into hiding, but the owner told us the cameras shut down that day. Tonight's third experience on the paranormal side. This happened twice. I suffer from anxiety and get really bad adrenaline dumps. So that paired with hypochondria, I am almost always feeling weird. It's been like this since I was 9. I'm 36 now. So I've gotten used to talking myself down. Unfortunately, when something really messed up, I tend to either ignore it, or if it's too bad, pop a Klonopin or two and ride it out. About 8 years ago, I did that. I was feeling super dizzy and kind of sick. But during a panic attack, I always felt super dizzy and kind of sick. So I just did the thing and lied down with a movie on. About 10 minutes later, I smelled my grandpa. My grandpa had this very distinct smell, like sandalwood and something else that was just him, and I heard him say, "Turn off the stove," in my head. He had passed away like 3 months or so before, so I thought maybe it was from his sweater. But you don't ignore your grandpa, dead or not. So I checked the stove. The gas was on, and I lived with 2 smokers. I turned it off and aired the house out. The second time wasn't very long ago, maybe a month or so. I'm diabetic, but not insulin dependent. So my sugar still tends to run high, so I don't generally worry about it getting too low. And again, the whole anxiety thing. Anyways, I wasn't feeling very good, so I went to bed kinda early and had a dream where I was in the house I grew up in. The entire house was dark, and I was standing in the dining room watching the kitchen, which was bright, and a bunch of people were wandering about, which was pretty normal as our house was kind of the family hub and where everyone went when they needed to go to a place. My stepdad and my aunt were sitting in their usual places, my aunt eating pizza. She loved pizza, like Teenage Ninja Turtle levels. And I wanted to go into the kitchen so bad because, like, holy crap, it's my house. My aunt gestured to the pizza box, and I was just about to walk in when my stepdad looked over and was like, "Poke your finger." My aunt looked kind of sad, and then I woke up. Went to check my blood sugar, and it was like 50, which isn't deadly, but it's pretty low when you run like 130 most of the time. It was spring of 2008. I just started my job at a fancy resort in upstate New York. I was assigned to work in the kitchen of a golf course restaurant, which was a few miles from the main hotel and resort. The restaurant was a small cottage that had a restaurant and a small locker room for the golfers of both sexes to use. The first encounter that made me think something was up with this old cottage was late April. The golf course was not open yet, as some snow still lay on the links. Only my boss, the head chef, and I were on the property prepping for a private party that was being hosted at the golf club. The kitchen was small and consisted of a small line of stoves, ovens, broilers, and a ticket window. This then led to a small dishwashing area that finally led to a small prep area that sported a screen door to the outside. I was in the prep area processing some vegetables for the evening service. It was a sunny, warm, late April afternoon, and I had the screen door open to the outside. All of a sudden, I heard the giggling of a child, which sounded like it was coming from just outside the screen door. The laughter got louder and louder till I finally checked out the door to find no one. The still closed golf course was completely empty. Soon after this, my boss came to check on my progress. I told him the story, and he asked if he had seen some children playing outside the club. He said no, then told me the story that chilled me. He had worked at these golf clubs for a few seasons now, and he told me that the club was haunted by a little boy. He said he moves stuff and plays tricks on people. I was instantly intrigued. I went out and bought a $20 digital recorder from Target. This was 2008, and phones were not what they are today. The cheap device was my plan to see if the story was true. I set the recorder up in the creepiest part of the cottage, the women's lockers, where several wait staff reported hearing voices and seeing things. I set the recorder up before I left for the night in the locker room and went home. The next day, I went back to work and ran to the back to grab my recorder. I spent the whole day listening at work, but was too busy to really listen. When I got back home, I threw on some headphones and listened as close as I could. At one point, I captured the waitress at the end of her shift talking. They were there, grabbing their purses and discussing tips. That's when I heard it. While chatting, I could hear the voice whisper, "Out now." The girls never acknowledged the voice. They kept talking as the voice that sounded like a low whisper was speaking. I was blown away. A $20 recorder, and the joke I was trying to disprove was seemingly more real by the second. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I ran into work the next day, recorder in hand. I went to the woman's locker room, located on the top floor and in the back of the cottage. I was alone. It was 6:30 in the morning, first to arrive. I took out my $20 recorder from Target and started to ask questions. "What's your name? Why are you here?" Pausing for a minute or two between questions. Silence. I heard nothing. After 10 questions or so, I take my recorder out to the car and hook it up to my large speaker. This is when I knew, once and for all, ghosts were real. So, real. I welled up in tears just writing this down. After I asked, "What's your name?" I heard clear as day, "Bobby, Bobby, Bobby." But this was not a living person. It sounded as if I was making a movie, like how a creepy ghost boy would sound in a horror movie. But this was real. This was not some dumb kid playing around, a joke on me. I let dozens and dozens of people hear this tape, scaring friends and family for years with this tape. Eventually, the recorder was lost, and I don't have it to share with you guys today. But again, I am not a ghost hunter. I'm not trying to sell this. I'm just a guy sharing my encounter. All right, guys, that's it for tonight's upload. Like I said, I'm a little bummed out about not getting the interview done tonight. But that's life, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break for the evening, and I'm probably going to work on tomorrow morning's Dogman encounter upload a little bit later. But I really need to just take some time to myself, maybe a couple hours, and just relax and not think about the channel. Come back refreshed. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path we call life. Until tomorrow, my friends. Until tomorrow.